One of the most deeply unsettling experiences a narcissist can face is the slow breakdown of the story they built about who they are and the place they believe they hold in your life. This is not just a hit to their ego. It's a crack right in the center of their identity. Narcissists don't deal with reality the way most people do. Instead, they live inside a kind of mental performance where they are always the main character, the center that everyone else is supposed to revolve around. But this personal story is extremely fragile. It only stays alive as long as other people keep accepting and playing the roles they have been given. For a long time, you probably went along with it. Maybe you didn't fully see what was happening, or maybe you felt like you had no real choice, but you stayed in it anyway. You explained yourself over and over. You defended your intentions. You tried endlessly to be understood. You excused their behavior, ignored your own needs, or put up with their emotional storms while hoping that one day they would honestly change. Over time, though, something much more important shifted inside you. The narcissist story relies completely on control, emotional control, mental control, even control over what counts as true or false in the relationship. They rewrite the past whenever it benefits them. They play down your pain, play up their struggles, and bend logic until it becomes a tool of power instead of a way to connect. Everything they do serves one purpose: to protect the illusion that they are special, superior, and always in charge. But that illusion only survives if you keep accepting it. The minute you stop, the moment you start to see through the lies and respond with calm awareness instead of heated emotion, the entire structure begins to splinter. It might not fall apart in some dramatic explosion, but the impact is huge because you are not just walking away on the outside. You are pulling back on the inside. For someone whose identity is built on outside approval, your quiet distance feels like a threat to their survival. To them, this is not simple rejection. It feels like betrayal. Your absence forces out into the open something they've worked hard to hide, even from themselves. The story they've been telling about who they are and how others see them is not real. This truth rarely comes to them in one clear moment. It slides in slowly, covered up as anger, coldness, or another round of blaming everyone else. Under all of that is a quiet fear that they may have been wrong about themselves from the beginning. This connects to a deeper truth about identity and the stories we tell. As humans, we understand ourselves through the storylines we carry about our lives, what we've done, who we've loved, what we've lived through. But when those stories are stiff and built on fantasy instead of reality, even one small crack can feel like total destruction. When you refuse to keep playing the role they handed you, they're left alone on an empty stage. They may hurry to find someone new, put the same hopes and demands on them, and try to rebuild the same pattern, but it never fully works. You were not just another character. You were someone who truly saw them, maybe more clearly than anyone else ever did. When the person who understood them most walks away, they're forced to face something more painful than being alone. They have to face the fact that the story itself was never real. It's a loss of direction. Without the role they played in your life, they no longer know who they are, because your presence gave their fake self something to lean against. Without you, the emptiness that was always there becomes impossible to avoid. This is where their grand illusion finally falls apart. Not just because you left, but because you left without. Begging for their understanding or their approval. You walked away with calm strength instead of drama. By doing that, you didn't just end a relationship, you pulled apart a fantasy. This is why your silence is so powerful. It carries a truth their ego can't argue with. In that quiet, the mask slips, and they are left facing the one thing they fear the most: who they are without you. Exact, so ruthless. Emotional distance might sound simple or even cold, but inside a narcissistic dynamic, it is deeply powerful. Detachment is not a lack of feeling. It is having control over your feelings. It starts when you stop reacting automatically. When your emotions can no longer be pulled, pushed, or turned against you, the narcissist realizes they no longer have a way into your inner world. That is the moment when their control actually ends. Narcissists are not just chasing attention. They're after your emotional energy. They want your highs and your lows, your anger, your sadness, your guilt, your confusion. Every emotional response you give them tells them they still matter. Even your pain proves to them that the bond is not broken. As long as you remain emotionally tied, they believe they can still twist the outcome. This is why your inner withdrawal shakes them so deeply. You're not easily triggered anymore. You stop chasing their approval. You don't keep reshaping yourself just to avoid a fight. You start responding with choice instead of reacting out of habit. By doing this, you take back your own authority, something they were never meant to own. This is not about becoming cold or numb. That would be shutting down, not growing. Real detachment is clear seeing. You see the narcissist as they really are, not as they pretended to be, and not as you wished they could become. You stop pouring your empathy all over them and start watching them with calm honesty. This is often when they make one big last effort to pull you back in. They might suddenly act kind, sorry, or strangely self-aware. Most of the time, this is not true change. It's a survival move. They are reacting to losing influence because your detachment has shifted the power. You're no longer living by their rules. You may start to notice small attempts to draw you back, little jabs, guilt trips, emotional pressure, nostalgic comments. When none of it works, when you don't give them anger, begging, or comfort, they are left with nothing to work with. For them, this is terrifying because it proves that their control is not just weaker, it's gone. This whole process is about becoming whole inside yourself. When you detach, you step out of the pull of someone else's emotional chaos. You plant yourself in your own center. You take back the right to decide what is real, what is okay, and what you will never allow again. You stop feeding their need to feel important at the cost of your own well-being. This change doesn't need a big fight or revenge. It needs steady self-respect. Indifference is the one response a narcissist cannot stand and cannot beat. They don't understand it and they cannot twist it. This is where your real growth starts, when you stop moving in reaction to them and start moving in line with your own rhythm. In time, they see that the old version of you they could control is gone. You have grown past the dynamic completely. Your freedom scares them on a deep level. Not just your ability to live your life, but your inner strength and your sense of who you are. This level of independence shines a light on what they lack. Narcissists are not rooted in themselves. Their sense of worth depends on constant reflection from others. Without that mirror, their false self crumbles, revealing deep insecurity and confusion. When you become emotionally self-reliant, you stop holding up their twisted version of reality. You become living proof that their power was always an illusion. You might wish that this truth would push them to change, but more often it leads to inner collapse because an identity built on running from the truth is very hard to repair. That is no longer your job. You've moved into a new chapter of life, one led by intention instead of reaction. By removing the belief that they were the center of your world, you forced them to face the truth they spent their life avoiding. They were never the source of your strength. You were worth it. Taking back your energy and building a life rooted in self-trust is your greatest win. The moment you no longer need them to tell you who you are is the moment they're left facing their own emptiness. And that is something they can no longer run from. When they get no reaction from you, they can fall into a deep state of psychological panic. To really understand this, you have to see that your emotional energy is what kept their false self going. Your anger, sadness, your need to explain, defend, or fix. Every one of those reactions has been their fuel. When those reactions stop, the narcissist begins to feel something like inner starvation. For years, they trained you to respond on cue. They pushed your buttons, created doubt, and counted on your predictable reactions. The moment that pattern stops working, their sense of reality starts to shake. They don't view your silence as healing or strength. They see it as a direct threat to their control. In their mind, your calm is not neutral. It is dangerous. That's why the time right after you pull away is often the most intense. They start flipping through roles quickly, playing the victim one moment, the attacker the next, then suddenly the loving, caring partner from the fun. Past. They are desperately searching for the version of themselves that can still reach you. Every role is an attempt to trigger a feeling in you and drag you back into the old story. This frantic behavior comes from a truth they cannot bear. If they can't control how you feel, they lose control over who they are in relation to you. A narcissist only feels powerful when someone else feels smaller. When you stay grounded and steady, you stop sending them any sign of their supposed power. The mirror you once held up goes blank. They look at you and see no proof of their superiority. In that emptiness, they are forced to sense how weak and unimportant they secretly feel. To get away from that feeling, they often push harder. This is when rumors spread, lies become bigger, and other people are pulled in as go-betweens. They search for any opening, any sign that you still care enough to be hurt. They believe pain means connection. What they don't see is that your withdrawal is not a trick or a silent attack. It is a full emotional exit. You have turned your attention inward. Your heart is no longer in the place where it used to find it. One of the most important inner shifts happens when you stop waiting for them to admit what they did. For a long time, your healing might have depended on the hope that they would finally get it. You may have thought that if you just explained why, ourself better, stayed calmer, tried harder, they would wake up and change. Letting go means accepting that this understanding will never come and realizing you don't need it anymore. Your reality does not need their agreement to be real. When this settles in your mind, their words lose their power. Their insults feel empty. Their praise sounds fake. You begin to see their actions not as a judgment on your value, but as signs of their own damaged inner world. This awareness becomes your shield. Gaslighting stops working because you trust your own senses again. You are no longer acting inside their emotional story. You are watching it from the outside. And this move from player to observer is what finally pushes them out of your life. They cannot function without emotional access to you. As you keep moving forward, the space that was once filled with drama and confusion starts to open up. A new kind of quiet appears. This silence is not heavy or scary like before. It is wide and calm. It lets you hear yourself again. You start to reconnect with parts of you that you hid to avoid conflict. Your interests come back. Your voice feels safe to use. You remember what it feels like to be around people who don't need you to shrink so they can feel big. The narcissist might still hang around the edges, watching, waiting for a weak spot, but your steady choices protect you. Day by day, you grow stronger. You stay anchored in your own truth, and their pull fades. The biggest result of your independence is that manipulation simply stops landing. You stop looking outside yourself for safety or proof that you matter. You become your own emotional anchor. You learn how to build your own sense of stability. To someone who survives by draining others, that kind of independence feels blinding. When you stop asking for fairness from someone who cannot give it, something permanent changes inside you. For years, you may have believed that reason, facts, or patience would lead to accountability. You hoped that one day they would face what they'd done. But the real turning point in healing comes when you see that their refusal to understand is a choice. It is not confusion. It is self-protection. Admitting their part would mean tearing down the fake image they built of themselves. Keeping that image safe matters more to them than your pain. So denial becomes their automatic move. Once you really accept this, you stop waiting for apologies and start living again. You take back the right to tell your story without their voice shaping it. This takes deep acceptance. You stop expecting adult emotional behavior from someone who doesn't operate that way. You see clearly that while you were searching for love and honesty, they were focused on control and ownership. That truth hurts, but it also sets you free. When you stop expecting dysfunction to act healthy, their behavior becomes predictable instead of personal. Their poking starts to look like a script. Their guilt tricks feel staged. You recognize the pattern instead of drowning in the feelings it stirs up. By watching them with distance instead of open vulnerability, you step out of the emotional cage they built. Slowly, your energy comes back to you. In the past, so much of your mind was spent watching their moods, calming their anger, or fixing emotional messes. Now that energy is yours again. At first, the quiet may feel strange. It can even feel empty. That's only because your body is getting used to a life without constant tension. What you're feeling is peace. In that space, you are free to explore who you are without being the fixer, the buffer, or the target. You can look at the old wounds that made you easier to manipulate, not to blame yourself, but to protect yourself in the future. This awareness helps make sure the pattern doesn't repeat. The narcissist may react to your calm with confusion or sudden aggression. They cannot stand the thought that you are okay without them. They may try to shake your peace or pretend they are completely transformed. But because you are now steady, these moves fall flat. You are no longer scanning them for signs of growth. You are focused on your own health. Your life stops being shaped by what they do. It becomes a reflection of your own values and choices. Choosing yourself ends the cycle of harm and starts the rebuilding. You are not defined by what they broke. You are defined by what you decided to heal. Moving from just surviving to truly growing means turning your focus inward. When the noise finally stops, the silence can feel strange, even scary. For a long time, your sense of self existed as a reaction to their behavior. Now you have to decide who you are without an enemy or a storm. This stage is about taking back your mind. It starts when you see that the harsh voice in your head is not really yours. It was planted there, shaped by their fears and projections. Healing means slowly taking that voice apart. Every thought that says you are not enough has to be challenged. Every belief that blames you for their actions has to be replaced with truth. As healing continues, your sense of time begins to shift. In abuse, life runs in emergency mode. You live moment to moment, always on guard for the next outburst. Now you can look ahead. You can picture a future. That can feel scary at first because your trust in your own judgment was damaged. You rebuild that trust through small, steady steps. You make promises to yourself and you keep them. You respect your boundaries even when no one is there to test them. You start listening to your intuition again. That quiet inner voice you once ignored becomes reliable. Every time you follow it, you repair a part of the connection they tried to break. You are coming back to yourself, slowly, surely, and for good.